What's going on, family? Welcome to The Exchange. It's a series of insightful conversations in culture, community, and corporate life with some of the top leaders from Wells Fargo. I'm your host, David Shands, and today we are discussing financial decision making that can help guide young investors. This conversation is so important in the climate that we're in today. We have to become financially literate and really understand what's going on in the financial landscape. So I am honored to be here with two of the leaders in the Wells Fargo organization. We have Mr. David Dawkins and Art Saldivar, correct? Saldivar?
Correct.
All right.
Yes.
Cool.
Yes.
So let's get into the introduction. Mr. David Dawkins, you are the managing director of diverse client segments. If you can kind of just introduce yourself and how you're a part of the organization.
Well, thank you, David. It's good to be here, man. I am, as you said, Dave Dawkins. I lead diverse client segments in Wells Fargo Advisors. And what that means is a pretty simple thing. Our mission in our group is to help our firm accomplish a couple of things. One is to attract, retain, develop, and advance diverse financial advisors and employees at the firm. Secondarily, to help to make our firm the most inclusive and welcoming place that we can so that diversity, when they arrive, will stay. And third, and equally as important, is attracting diverse clients and helping to impact the racial wealth gap by welcoming investors, particularly diverse investors, into our marketplace, which historically has been underserved by our industry.
Wow. Very important. Very important. Thank you so much. And before we get into the conversation, definitely want to introduce Art Saldivar. You are the managing director for the Wealth Director for Pacific South region.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Been with the firm 20 years, David, and I've been fortunate enough to have different roles within the firm, and most recently as the wealth director of the Pacific South division for wealth and investment management. And in my role, I help the division grow and expand both the high net worth and the ultra high net worth segment. And we do that by helping attract, retain, expand relationships through all the amazing offerings we have within the private bank. So looking forward to having this dialogue with you, and thanks for the invite.
Absolutely. Art, while I have you, man, I guess you're getting the game from such a high level, like the ultra wealthy. But what I want to know is, what do the wealthy, the super wealthy, know and understand that a 18-year-old kid coming into Wells Fargo to open a bank account for the first time, what are some of the things that they understand about money that this young kid doesn't?
Yeah, great question. Most of the clients that we have are self-made. So they were that 18-year-old at one point opening up that account years ago. I would say that it's having discipline, and then paying yourself first, David. So in other words, before we spend money on certain things, really having that discipline around and putting a certain percentage aside, whatever that is, to pay yourself first, whether that's 5%, 10%, and watch that accumulate over time. So I would say that's the thing, is paying yourself first is something that's very consistent with that segment.
Absolutely. I guess I didn't understand it when I first got my Fargo account. I had a checking, and they just asked me, "Do I want a savings?" I didn't even know what to do with it though. But I guess that's a part of David. I'm definitely interested in your story, being the first African American to serve on the Wells Fargo Advisors operating committee. Earlier today, you spoke about the wealth gap or the wealth divide, especially in the African American community. Can you talk a little bit about that and why you felt the need to be a part of this committee?
The reason I'm doing what I'm doing is because you could tell I'm not a kid anymore. I've been in this business. This is my 42nd year, shockingly. And this business has been great to me. But one of the things I have noticed and I'm quite aware of is that our industry has not served my community very well. And my community, as a result of that, it shows up in the way we invest, right? And so, what I'm committed to doing, and my firm is committed to doing, and I'm happy to be a part of that, candidly, which is the reason I'm doing what I'm doing, is to be able to go out to community and speak to people about investing and sharing with people what it is that I've learned and practiced and shared with investors for the last 40 years of my career about the importance of what Art was talking about earlier, is the understanding that first you have to save and you have to be very disciplined about it. And once you've saved and are saving and you're accumulating assets, then you have to figure out how to invest that asset, because they're two different things, right? Saving and investing. And learning how to invest that asset is critical to building wealth. And the second half of that is once you learn how to invest it, then you have to learn how to distribute it. Because that's the other part that I think is missing in diverse communities, in particular in the African American community, is that wealth transfer. There is an opportunity for us to do significantly better than we're doing there, and that's part of the process. And so, in serving on in my current role and serving as a leader at Wells Fargo Advisors, I get an opportunity to speak and lead in those areas for the firm.
And I ask you this, Dave, too, and I'll come right to you, Art. What was your first investment?
Oh my goodness. My first investment. It's so long ago. That's hard. That's hard to remember. I think my first investment was buying options in a company called, oh my goodness. It's a Exeter. No, it's not a, we may want to come back to that because I can't remember. But I remember it was buying options in a company in the cable television industry. They're a cable manufacturing company right when the cable TV industry, and I'm dating myself, was starting, and I thought they were going to conquer the world, and I bought options in it and lost my shirt, and that was my first experience.
Wow, Art, do you remember your first investment? And how old were
Boy.
you too, Art?
I think I was definitely in my early 20s, and if I recall, that's a good question as well. I was giving some thought. It was either Coca-Cola or Home Depot. Yeah, it was one of those, and mainly because I remember talking to an older gentleman, and he always said, "Hey," he goes, I've always invested in things that I that I know about, or that's either in my cupboard or in my garage." And that always stuck with me, especially I think with that generation of really understanding. And I think he had Campbell's Soup. He had, I don't know if it was Eastman Kodak at the time, food items. But I remember, I think it was either Coca-Cola and Home Depot, I believe.
Wow. So, do you still have those stocks?
Oh, see, now you got to ask me that. See, why do you go there? No, unfortunately.
By the way, I
What would
remember,
you?
David, I remember the name of the company was Annixter Brothers was the name of the company, a cable manufacturing company. I bought short-term options and they expired worthless. Another story for another day.
Wow. What would you tell your children? I'll start with Art. Knowing what you know now, your first investments, obviously investments over the years, how would you advise your children, a younger brother, younger sister, or a grandchild, or what have you? Art, what would you tell them about growing your money from your experience?
Well, number one is don't compare yourself to other people, right? Because most people out there will like to embellish things that they're buying this or investing here. So stick to your own game plan. I would also say that don't try to time the market, David. It's more important to your time in the market than trying to time the market. Trying to get in and out and guess on what's going to be the hot item and when is really not a very good approach at all to investing long term. And then the third thing would be to try to minimize the emotional piece of investing and really look at it in a disciplined approach, saying, "Look, this is something that I'm going to invest, whether it's 3 years, 5 years, 10 years out, and coming at it from that perspective versus just the emotional one."
For the younger you or your children, knowing what you know about money now, what would you teach?
That's for me, I take it, right? So
Yes,
I
sir.
have I have I have three daughters, David, and they will probably repeat verbatim what I'm about to share with you because I drilled it into them from they were little kids. Number one is uh, discipline. That saving or investing doesn't happen to you; you make it happen. And the most powerful tools you have available to you in success around investing or savings, other than actually doing it, is number one, time. The earlier you start, the better. Second is maximize the amount that you contribute. As much as you can, that's what you do. Third is compounding is a very powerful tool. I don't hear people talk much about that anymore. You set aside money, you allow it to grow over time, and the growth is reinvested, actually helps to accumulate wealth faster than anything else. And then secondarily, dollar cost averaging. Dollar cost averaging is whatever you're investing in, whether you're buying an individual stock, you're buying into a mutual fund, you're buying into a portfolio of mutual funds, whatever it is, don't worry so much about the roller coaster. Just keep investing, whether it's up or down, just keep investing. And I'll end with this. When I started my first day as a financial advisor back in the dark ages, the Dow was around 970. Today, the Dow is round numbers 35,000. So just think about it. In 42 years, we've gone from 970 to 35,000. And over the course of that time, we've had war, we've had plagues. That's what I'm calling the pandemic. We've had all kinds of presidents. We've had attempted assassinations. We've had all manner of things and stock market crashes all along the way. But despite that, we've gone from 970 to 35,000. Imagine what that does to money over time and what wealth would look like from back then until now. And so time, compounding, dollar cost averaging, very critical to your success in investing.
Man, I can imagine nowadays, guys, you both see that this generation, the word time isn't as popular. I mean, because everybody wants a quick hit right now, and nobody
Mm-hmm.
sees, like you said, the compounding interest. Um, Art, I like to know how you're putting your money to work. And let me ask this question. My community, Art, they say that you shouldn't trust banks because they just take your money and you can never grow your money through a bank. And I actually had a banker that really cared about me, and he was like, he really sat me down and gave me some game on where to put my money to help it grow. What kind of advice would you have, Art, for the person that says, "Well, I wouldn't put my money in a bank because I can't help my money won't grow there."
Hmm. Yeah, very good question. And I can speak from my own community, the Latino community, and that's something that um, at times that also presents itself. And nothing could be further than the truth. The fact that these institutions, an institution like our firm, does a a great job in not only facilitating investments but educating both in the short term, midterm, and long term. Um, and just to add to what David said about compounding interest, just that alone. I mean, Albert Einstein even said, compound interest is probably the most powerful thing ever seen by mankind or discovered by mankind. Just because it grows upon that. And many of us just never had the opportunity to grow up with that education from an early on, right? I did the same thing that David has done. I have 2 daughters. And just to get them an early start to their journey around what it means to accumulate investments over time is huge. And I share this with the communities, different communities, is that, sit down with somebody and just learn, get educated around what it means to invest long term, the power of compound interest. And what happens is, as you see your accumulation grow over time, you get more excited, right? And you see, hey, this really works. Let me delve into other areas of investments now. So, David, to answer your question, I think it takes baby steps, but we need to really understand that firms such as ours, as Wells Fargo, we're here to educate the community.
Absolutely. And Art, and to the second part of the question, Art, what avenues or vehicles do you put your money in to help your money grow?
So I've been fortunate as well over the years of being able to be disciplined in investing. I remember an old manager told me, an old leader goes, put away money until you feel it, and I have over the years, my wife and I have, and I mean, I have currently, I think that, you have your typical mutual funds, you have your different individual stocks, you have individual bonds, individual exchange traded funds. I mean, there's so many avenues. I could spend half an hour just talking about the ways I've been fortunate enough to diversify. But I think if you were to ask a young professional right now, or a young adult, what's the best way to invest? I would say there's some great mutual funds, exchange traded funds that are very low cost to manage those, and you get the diversification, whether it's here domestically, David, internationally, or both. There's so many, and David can attest to this, there's so many more options today than when David and I started in the industry, that it's just a matter of choosing which one's best for you.
Wow, thank you so much. And David, I will pose the same 2 questions to you. One is, especially in the African American community, you hear don't trust banks. Like they're all. It was funny. I thought it was the bank's fault that I overdrafted my account, and that was that's what we're taught in our community, right? But what are some investments what would you say to that? And 2, what are some investments that you put your money in?
Right. So with regards to the trust, well, the question really is, I get it, but who are you going to trust? Because at some point you're going to have to trust somebody with building and growing wealth, because we're not in that business. We're doing what we do, right? We're professionals, or we're in a service industry, or we're whatever it is we do. We're salespeople doing what we do. And your job is to go out and execute at your job every day. And when it comes to building wealth, you can trust yourself, I suppose, or you can trust a professional. I'm not a doctor, and I don't play one on TV. When I need advice about my physical health, I go to a doctor. When I need advice about my financial health, I see a financial professional. Today, I'm no longer a financial advisor, but I do now have a financial advisor, because in my day job, I don't have time to sit around and watch markets and pretend I know. So I actually trust the advice of a financial advisor. And I understand the genesis of those thoughts, but at some point, you're going to have to make a decision to identify somebody you can trust who can give you good advice. In terms of what I do, It's pretty straightforward. It's pretty simple. The majority of my monies are invested in broadly diversified mutual funds and exchange traded funds, period. I rebalance them on a quarterly basis to make sure that those investments are aligned to my own personal risk tolerance, aligned to my own time horizon for my investments, aligned to my own investment experience, and aligned to the goals that I'm trying to achieve. I'm going to be retired, I guess, one of these days, probably in the next 10, 15 years. I'll think about it. I'm concerned about my kids and their future, and making sure that I'm passing on to them those things that I've been blessed with, and making sure that it's done properly. And so I leverage a financial advisor to do that. There is a percentage, however, of my money, because I like to play. I like to think that I know some things, and I leverage those funds, and I take what I call screamers every once in a while. Some of them have worked out, some of them have not, because the market is not, it's not as predictable as we'd like for it to be. But I take what I call educated bets on things going, but that's just with a small percentage of my money. The rest of my investments are broadly diversified, well allocated, and match as I said, my risk tolerance, time horizon, and personal experience with investing to achieve specific goals that I'm trying to achieve.
David, thank you so much. And I got a question for both of you. And I know young minds want to know, where is money going? It seems like less and less cash is not as accepted as it was. And, you have like your cryptocurrencies and, kind of like credits. And, it's just like um, cash is not as widely used, I'll say. Art, do you have any conversation around that topic?
Oh, sure. I mean, I think you're right, and I think during this pandemic, cash was even taken less. Everything was a swipe or a debit credit card or what have you. So I think you'll probably see less and less cash being taken as the years go on. In terms of in terms of crypto, boy, I leave that up to our Wells Fargo Investment Institute to give us guidance. I know that we have a take on it, and whatever that looks like over the next year, 3 years, 5 years, I really couldn't tell you. I'm not well well versed in that area, but that's something that's gonna. It looks like it's here to stay. I don't know what that's going to look like for investors or for firms like us. But yeah, that's one area that I'm also on this side of the desk learning as we go.
Absolutely, Dave. David, do you have any conversation around that? Will cash be here for long term? Will the banks just hold our crypto, or what are you thinking about that?
So my personal view is, and this is not investment advice, right? My personal view is cryptocurrency is the future, just like electric vehicles are the future, just like automated driving is the future. The question is, which one, right? Is it Bitcoin? Is it Ethereum? Is it, I don't know which one, but I do believe it is the future. But because I don't know how it's going to go, then I'm not betting the house or the farm on any individual cryptocurrency, nor am I betting the farm on any particular electric vehicle or automated driving or whatever. Will cash be around? I think there's a place for cash in the future. But it certainly will probably, in my opinion, play a diminished role as we go in time, because to your point, we're swiping more. Very few places the pandemic has demonstrated that are even accepting cash today. And when you're thinking about the fact that the world is flatter than it's ever been, and every country has its own currency to facilitate transfer of monies globally, I think something like cryptocurrencies probably will facilitate that. But I'm not the pro. I wouldn't hold myself out as the pro. But I certainly am watching and learning and trying to understand as we go along, so that as people ask questions, and certainly my daughters and clients ask questions all the time, and I'll be able to give some insight. But that's my view of it.
Absolutely. Good answer. Good answer. I was talking to a financial advisor one time about building wealth, and he said the number one thing that prevents us from building wealth is food. It's just the little swipes here, little swipes there, and if you calculate all of it, it proves to be one of the things that's eating up at your wealth. As young investors are, looking to have this future where they're, old and gray, and I want to be in a position where I don't have to stress over my finances. What do you think some of the things that trip them up, or what are some things that trips you up? And I'll start with you, Art, on your journey of building wealth.
Yeah, you're right. It's those little. It's not the big purchases that sometimes get you. It's those little, going to the coffee shop, getting lunch, going out with your friends to, happy hour, and doing this, doing that. I think it's that piece of it at the end of the month. You go, oh my gosh, I can't believe I spent $600-800 on these things, and I have nothing to account for it. You're right, and I think that goes back to the initial comment of paying yourself first. Both, that's the theme that I think you hear both David and I talk about, is you have to be disciplined. You have to pay yourself first. And then if you want to go ahead and buy that cup of coffee or those nice shoes you saw on sale, then you do that with what's left over at the end of the month, budgeting. I also think that there's misconception out there that the people that are wealthy or become wealthy, it just happened to them overnight, and it hasn't. There's a book that I really enjoy. It's by Thomas Stanley. It's called Millionaire Next Door, that talks about the discipline of the wealthy of America, and they don't drive the fancy cars. They don't, wear the fancy clothes. They don't do. I mean, it's just very kind of monotonous discipline, year in, year out, focused on accumulating assets for a long period of time. And that book has shown me, in its simplest form, a disciplined approach, not only for myself and my family, but also to share with others.
I was just going to say, so I told you I started my career a long, long time ago. About the second year I was in the business, I met a gentleman who I met him by telephone. And when he came in to meet with me, I remember the receptionist calling me and telling me, there's a strange looking gentleman in the lobby who wants to see you. His name is X, right? And I said, well, yeah, tell him to have a seat. In fact, I've escorted him to a conference room. I'm expecting him. And she was, are you sure? I said, yeah. I'm expecting him. So I walk out there and she looks at me sideways like, why are you meeting this guy? Right? So I didn't understand what was going on until I actually entered the conference room. And I get in the conference room and this gentleman looked disheveled. He had a ketchup stain on his shirt. He did not look like the person that I was introduced to or I thought would show up at my office, except that he was a multimillionaire. He was a board member of a New York Stock Exchange member firm. And I stopped. I hesitated when I walked in the room, and he said, I'm not what you expected, am I? I said, well, it's not for me to, I have no expectations about who I'm meeting with. He says, I do this deliberately. I grew up poor, and people made judgments about me, and they still make judgments about me, except now I have, millions of dollars. And instead of squandering my money on the way I look or the car I drive, I invest that money so I can take care of myself and my family. And it was I think at the time I was 24 years old, it was a great lesson. Unfortunately, I didn't follow his advice initially. I had to learn that later on because I was more interested in how I look and what car I showed up in and this sort of thing early on in my life. I have certainly learned that it is important to be very disciplined about saving. And yes, to Art's point earlier, pay yourself first. If you put money away, then it's not available to you to spend, and live off of what's left over. Whether you choose to set aside 10% or 15%, whatever that number is, set it aside, let it accumulate, and live on what's left over. And initially, that may seem like a difficult thing to do, like anything else. But once you're doing it, it becomes your lifestyle, it becomes your norm. It's like working out or anything else. Starting out, working out is a very difficult thing to do. It takes a lot of brain power in order to get up and get on your bike or go run or weight lift with whatever it is you do for exercising. But once you're doing it, it becomes your norm. The same thing is true about disciplining your finances, and that would be my recommendation. And then with what you're living on, if you have it to buy coffee or donuts or whatever you're into, man, then have at it. But at least you know that you're disciplined about the most important thing, which is your future.
David, speaking of which, like where to put your money, and Art, I'm going to ask you the same question. If you can give the people a formula or a template to follow on what to do with your money, um, I remember a training where they said, well, you take 10% and you save 10%. You have $100. What would a young person need to do? If you could just give them a little formula, I'll start with you, Dave, and then Art, you can wrap us up.
Yeah, so start with the end in mind, right? According to people who claim to know, you need to be able to live on 75, you need to accumulate enough wealth so that when you are retired, you will have income generated by the asset you've built, the nest egg that that will generate 75% of your pre-retirement income. So think about that for a second, right? You need to have enough assets stashed away that all by itself, it produces 70%, 75% of your income before you were retired. So if you know that that's the deal, you just do the math backwards. And there are tools to help you. They're called financial calculators. If you don't know how to use one, find a financial advisor and say, hey, this is what I earned today. If I assume my income increases by 10% between now and when I would expect to retire, my income would be, what would 75% of that be? And how much do you think I would need to have in order to generate 75% of my pre-retirement income? It's not that hard to do. And then there are tools to help you figure out then how much do I need to save? And the easiest thing to do, first of all, if you're working for a company that has a retirement plan like a 401k, that is God's gift to humanity, right? Invest in your company's 401k, set money aside. And the key rule I want to tell you is, if in fact your company has a matching program where they're matching your contribution, whatever it is they're matching. So for instance, let's say if you set aside 6% of your income, they will match that dollar for dollar. Make sure you get every single dollar they're giving away. So if they're matching 6%, you better put in at least 6% because that's the best return on your money you're ever going to get. 100% return on your money before it's invested. That's a layup. And then from there, so that's how much you're setting aside. That's how much you're saving. Then how do you invest that money? I would say a diversified portfolio of securities that span company size, that span industries, that are invested not just here in the United States, but invested globally. That's not just in terms of stocks and bonds, but may have opportunities for exposure to things like real estate or metals or maybe even cryptocurrency, so that you have a broad spectrum of investments that you're investing in. And that accomplishes two things for you. One is it helps you to navigate the ups and downs in the market, because different types of investment respond differently in different economic climates. And so you give yourself the opportunity to earn a return regardless of what's happening in the market. And it spreads your risk. If you only invest in one thing and that thing goes south, you're out of a lot of money. But by being invested in multiple things, you eliminate a lot of that downside risk. And those would be my two immediate things. One, 401k, it's a no-brainer, do it. And if you can't do 401k because your company doesn't have it, at least take full advantage of an IRA. And then secondarily, invest in a diversified portfolio, plain and simple.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dave. Art, to you for the wrap up. Do you have a formula, something we can leave with to follow in our journey of building wealth?
Well, I remember the old adage of take your age and put that in fixed income, and then the rest in equities. But that's probably something that's 20 or 30 years old. So in other words, if you're 25 years old, put 25% in something that's a little more conservative, and 75% in things that are more growth oriented or more aggressive. But the one commodity that the youth have is on their side is time. So I would be growth oriented. I would look at also those countries, those areas where they're developing a little bit. I put a small percentage in that. I think our fastest growing segment of investors will be coming from developing countries over the next 5 or 10 years. It's just that's where we're seeing the trend, and I think that will continue. You're going to see these countries in terms of their own socioeconomic health also continue to grow. I'm a big fan of that. If you talk to younger adults, that's an area also that they're very focused on. And so those were two. And then the other one that I would say is a lot of our youth and all investors are very in tune with what we call ESG investing, David, and that's environmental, social, and governance focused, where we all have passions, we all have kind of this moral compass of what we want in life, and also what we want in our investments. And so there are investments out there that can mirror those beliefs that can also grow exponentially long term. So just know that the tools and the resources that are available to young investors today are 1,000-fold more powerful than they were back when I entered in the industry. So David, I just want to hand it over to you and thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much. Art, David, this has been a treat. I have 20 more questions and probably another hour worth of interview, but we don't have that much time here. So maybe we can definitely continue this conversation. But I just want to thank you gentlemen for pouring into people that may never get a chance to meet you, never get a chance to have someone pour this information into them. And I can guarantee someone will take this information and it will turn their entire life around. So thank you so much. I hope you guys enjoyed the conversation as much as I have. You all have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.